It all began on a Tuesday morning that was supposed to be routine but turned into the kind of day that etches itself into memory with a mixture of absurdity and rage, because I had a scheduled remote briefing with the state attorney regarding a sensitive case I'd been building for months, one that involved white-collar fraud, HOA embezzlement, and a string of illegal property deals in our county, and the last thing I expected was that my neighbor, whom everyone in the community nicknamed Karen, for reasons that will soon become clear, would storm across my driveway in fiery red heels with her brat of a son demanding possession of my Harley Davidson as if it were a toy on a store shelf. And if you think I'm exaggerating, buckle up, because the ride is only beginning. See, I had just positioned my laptop in the garage, the Harley polished and gleaming nearby, partly because I like to work around my bike when I need focus, partly because I'd been planning to take it for a spin afterward. And as I was mid-sentence explaining financial evidence trails to the state attorney's office, I saw movement at the corner of my eye. The flash of a bright red pantsuit striding up the driveway like a matador charging a bull. And before I could mute my microphone or excuse myself, Karen was already pointing at me, her face twisted into that familiar mask of exaggerated outrage, yelling loud enough that even through my noise-canceling mic the attorney on the other side must have heard, "My son wants that bike. So either you sell it to him for a fair neighborly price or you hand it over like a decent member of this community." And I wish I were making this up, but I swear the state attorney cleared his throat awkwardly as though unsure if this was part of my briefing or some strange live demonstration, and I scrambled to mute the call while standing up, clenching my jaw because I knew if I snapped at her it would only fuel her theatrics, and standing next to her was her son, a lanky kid dressed in what he clearly thought was biker gear. A fake leather vest over a band tee, cheap spiked wristbands, and boots too big for his legs, crossing his arms and smirking like he was about to inherit the Harley by divine right. So I tried the calm approach, telling her, "This isn't for sale, not at any price, and certainly not to a teenager who doesn't even have a license." But Karen, being the master of twisting logic, shrieked, "He deserves it more than you because he actually appreciates it, unlike you who just lets it sit there like some garage ornament." And before I could reply she stomped a heel so hard on my driveway I thought she'd crack the cement, then added, "Besides, under HOA guidelines, you can't even park it outside without prior approval, so technically I could report you right now unless you cooperate." And my patience snapped a little but I stayed measured, saying, "First of all, it's in my driveway which is private property. Second, the HOA doesn't regulate vehicles like that. And third, you are not going to blackmail me over my own motorcycle." But that only made her more unhinged, and she spun toward her son, theatrically waving a manicured hand. "See honey, I told you men like this think they're above the rules, but mommy will fix it." And right there, with zero hesitation, she pulled out her phone and dialed 911, screeching into the receiver that there was a violent biker threatening her and refusing to comply with community safety, which was so far from the truth it would have been comical if it weren't terrifying. And within minutes 2 patrol cars rolled up, lights flashing, while I was still trying to reconnect to the state attorney's call because the whole thing had cut out in the chaos, and now I had officers approaching me cautiously as though I were the aggressor, asking me to step away from the motorcycle, and Karen, with Oscar-worthy dramatics, was clutching her chest like she was about to faint, pointing at me, shrieking, "He said he'd dare me to stop him, he threatened me in front of my child." While her son nodded like some backup actor in her theater troupe. But luckily one officer recognized me, Detective Lewis, who had worked cases with me before, and immediately diffused the tension by telling his partner, "Hold up, this guy's clean, I know him, he's on official business." And I exhaled relief, quickly explaining that I had been mid-briefing the state attorney when Karen barged in making demands for my Harley. But instead of backing down, Karen doubled down, insisting that I was hiding something illegal, that my bike wasn't registered, and that I was using it as evidence in some secret gang scheme. And honestly, if you've ever seen cops trying not to laugh on duty, that was the moment, because Lewis looked like he was going to crack up. But professionalism held, and he calmly asked her for evidence of her claims, which of course she didn't have, and that's when she pivoted to her favorite weapon. Tears. Sobbing that all she wanted was for her son to have a chance at happiness, with the bike he dreamed of, and that I was a cruel, heartless neighbor crushing a young boy's dream. And by now I was furious but also deeply aware that every wasted minute was jeopardizing my professional briefing. So I asked Lewis if I could call the state attorney back with him as a witness to explain the situation, and he agreed, stepping aside while I rejoined the video call and clarified the entire absurdity to the attorney, who, to my shock, didn't seem annoyed but instead smirked and said, "Well, if your neighbor's antics are tied to HOA mismanagement, this only strengthens the case we're building," which was the silver lining I hadn't expected. And while Karen kept huffing and puffing in the background like the wolf denied entry to the house, Lewis finally told her, "Ma'am, this is a civil matter, not criminal, and you can't just demand someone else's property." But she wasn't having it, threatening to sue me personally, threatening to escalate with the law, and finally storming off dragging her sulking son, but not before shouting over her shoulder, "This isn't over. You'll regret this when the whole community is on my side." And I thought that would be the end, but 2 days later an anonymous HOA complaint landed in my inbox citing noise pollution and unsafe vehicle storage, which was clearly her doing, except what she didn't realize was that the state attorney's office now had reason to subpoena HOA complaint logs, and when they did, not only did her bogus report surface but also a trail of fraudulent expense authorizations under her signature as she had been acting treasurer. And in one of the most satisfying twists of fate I've ever seen, the woman who called the cops on me to steal my Harley ended up being indicted for financial fraud tied to HOA funds. And as for her son, last I heard he still didn't have a license and spends his days sulking about the bike that should have been his, while my Harley remains polished and roaring, a symbol not just of freedom on the open road but of surviving the madness of HOA Karen herself. And if there's any lesson in this insanity, it's that sometimes the people who scream the loudest about rules are the very ones breaking them behind closed doors. And when they come after you, stay calm, document everything, and let justice catch up, because in the end, no entitled demand, no false cop call, and no HOA treasurer in a red pantsuit can strip you of what you've earned, maintained, and protected with both patience and grit.